So today, once again, Saturday, December 12th. My name is Joy Burns, and this is my Dharma talk, Which Way to Right Mindfulness. Back in June, I did a Dharma talk, and when I was in a gathering with my teacher and the other two leaders of this group, Lee and Tracy, um, I had mentioned during my talk that frequently when I'm sitting, I experience restlessness. And restlessness is one of the hindrances, one of the 5 hindrances that the Buddha taught about. Um, and she said, you didn't really expand on restlessness. So here is my expansion talk on restlessness and how it relates to right mindfulness. Oddly enough, another one of the hindrances is aversion. And whenever I hear the word right, I feel some degree of aversion towards that word. And so one of the things that the three of us have also been exploring is ways to get around the word right and use some other word. And so if right brings up that aversion feeling, then by all means relate to this by saying wise mindfulness or skillful mindfulness. And so here we are at the 7th of the 8 teachings on the Eightfold Path, skillful mindfulness, which is part of samadhi, mental discipline. Last month we taught about right effort, skillful effort, and next month we will be teaching about skillful concentration. So restlessness has been around for me in my practice for a very long time. I can remember going on my first retreat at IMS and just talking to Steve Armstrong and talking about how hard it was for me to sit and to stay still because I had all of these sensations in my body of just wanting to move around, and what most people think of when they think of meditation is sitting still and being so calm. And meanwhile, I feel like I'm sitting at the table at my grandmother's house where she would always play this New York radio station, 1010 Winds, which is a 24-hour talk radio station. And that's what was going on in my head, just this nonstop chatter. And not really even chatter that's going anywhere or has an object, just chatter, chatter, chatter. And so Steve Armstrong told me, go outside, go for a walk, and enjoy your time here, which to me always felt like something existential, like enjoy your time on this planet or enjoy your time in this life, and not just enjoy your time at IMS and in Barre, Massachusetts. And so over the years, I sat some more retreats. And I sat one particular retreat, which if there is ever a movie made of my life, this retreat will be in the movie. And the reason why is because every time I sat down on my cushion, Billy Idol's White Wedding played in my head. And yes, that's very funny. But it wasn't funny when it kept happening. It was like, okay, is this going to be one of those times? It felt like that movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where it keeps resetting. He wakes up and the alarm clock goes off. It's the same time. Is this going to happen again? And yes, I sat down on my cushion and White Wedding played again. And so it got to the point at which I just said, okay, I'm just going to accept that wedding is what's arising for me. And I don't know why, but it is. Here we are. Welcome. And the more I welcomed it, the more it dissipated. Um, and so, restlessness, what the Buddha taught about restlessness was um, that it can be physical, kind of an inability to settle down and you're just fidgeting and you can't stay still. It's this incessant impulse to move the body, or mental, you know, sitting at my grandmother's dining room table, listening to her, listening to the 24-hour talk radio station with persistent chatter, 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 chatter. And also, the third piece is that subtle clinging. So I'm sitting in the summer in some at Omega, and I have this blissful moment of stillness. And the second I say to myself, oh, this is so cool, this blissful moment of stillness, even that thought is an aspect of restlessness. Just having that arise is an aspect of restlessness. And so in the Mahasati Prahana Sutra, don't ask me to say that again. We'll write it down. What the Buddha taught about right mindfulness, which in Pali is called samasati, what he said is, and what is right mindfulness? There is the case where a monk remains focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. He or she remains focused on feelings in and of themselves, the mind in and of itself, mental qualities in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, putting aside greed and distress with reference to the world. This is called wise mindfulness. This is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and distress, for the attainment of the right method, and for the realization of unbinding. In other words, the four frames of reference. And so I read that and I said, another list? The Four Noble Truths, the Eight Mindful Paths, and now it's the four references? But this actually, this makes a lot of sense to me. And it was in that passage that I just read. The four references. Number one is the body. The body is an object of our meditation, or the subjective awareness of the body, all the sensations, all of our sense stores open of sight and sound, of smelling and of taste, and how we can use the body um, as a gateway in every moment, even when we aren't on the cushion, even when I'm not sitting with the Sangha, that can be my gateway to mindfulness. And the second is feelings. In our culture, when we say the word feelings, we're thinking about emotions. the Buddha meant something a bit different. The tones of pleasant or unpleasant or of neutral that arise in any experience. And number 3 is the mind, the consciousness and the states of consciousness and awareness that we can experience in any moment. And the third is the fourth is phenomena. And that's all the other content of the mind, including thoughts, emotions. So there's where the emotions are in phenomena. Desires, images, plans, inner conflicts, views, murky psychological dynamics, transference from childhood, and phenomena is the kitchen sink. Whatever wasn't on the other 3, that's what phenomena is. And so here we are. Wise mindfulness is using these 4 things, the body, feelings, and the mind, and phenomena, as our portal into wisdom and mindfulness. And so over the years, I had many interviews with teachers, and I would always ask them about restlessness, because it's always been my buddy on the cushion. And I remember asking Christina Feldman when I was on the women's retreat, how do I work with restlessness and what could be the possible causes, what's arising? And she's like, I don't know. Could it be my antidepressants that are somehow, is that one of the side effects of one of the antidepressants I'm on? I don't. And so I would seek every retreat I was on, no matter how long or how short. If it was more than a day, I'd write the teacher a note, can I have an interview? And if you didn't know, that's the way to get an interview if there's no formal interview set up. You can always write the teacher a note and say, can I get an interview? And if they have time, they will frequently permit it. And so here I would be in front of Sharon or Narayan or some other teacher, and I'd say, so this restlessness, it keeps arising in my practice. I don't know. In the end of September, I was on the BIPOC Meta retreat, and I had a level of stillness that I had never really experienced in any retreat. And I felt like I was 100% congruent and authentic about who I was. And it occurred to me that part of what was rising for me about the restlessness was memories in my body of childhood traumas. And that this retreat was a space that allowed it to come up, allowed it to arise, and allowed me to hold it. And so I asked the teachers, and they talked about the trauma. And I realized that part of what had been arising for me at all those other retreats was I was the only person of color in the whole retreat. And I couldn't settle down because I had this childhood trauma in my body about race. And I didn't, because some of this stuff happened when I was very little, I didn't have words for it to articulate it and bring it out. And it was memories in my body. And I hadn't yet gained any skill in learning how to interpret that. And the BIPOC metta retreat, because it was 5 days of offering ourselves metta, even though I wasn't in a retreat center, it was no October, so I was at home, but I was still sitting with 600 people every day who were people of color. And I was able to dive into that, even though it was a screen and a camera. I was still able in some way to experience that sense of safety, and to allow all of those body memories to arise and to meet them. And that is, for me, how liberation happens. Is it can arise, and then I can let it go. It can go out into the world. Or I can find ways to articulate it at last and find some rest in my body, because now it's moving through me and not held in my shoulders or my neck. While I was on this journey about the restfulness, the restlessness, the other thing that happened years ago, was I was at a talk that Joseph Goldstein gave, and he said that when he had been grappling with restlessness, that he said to himself, well, if this is the way it's going to be, and it's going to be forever, then I'm just going to be with this forever. I'm going to work with this. I'm not going to push it away. I'm going to give it some acceptance, some loving kindness, and some care. And so that's the other piece. That's the other piece of the teachings about working with the hindrances. The hindrance of the restlessness. The other piece of restlessness that I have not talked about, but maybe when we talk about the hindrances we can, is restlessness and worry go together. I separated them for this talk, but restlessness and worry go together. So restlessness, or this sense of aversion to the word right, if that's what's arising, then give some care to it. Thank you very much, my brother Cormac, for teaching me more care needed here. This is where the more care is needed. Bit more attention, bit more spaciousness, instead of the pushing it away. The practice, the wisdom of bringing it in, of inviting it. Thich Nhat Hanh says, here you are, my dear friend, restlessness, and sit down. Like when the Buddha encounters Mara after his enlightenment, and he says, Mara, here, have a seat. Here is a cup of tea. And the piece that's implied is, because I know you're not staying. You're coming to visit, and then you're leaving. You are not a permanent visitor in my house. And so there is maybe sometimes just a little bit of confrontation. But Hello, my restlessness. Welcome. Have a seat.